The first time I saw Lieutenant Maya Reeves, she was bleeding out on the floor of our interrogation chamber, and I honestly thought we had been sent defective cargo. This is the human? Commander Vrathix clicked his mandibles in what I can only describe as profound disappointment. This fragile thing? To be fair, she did look rather pathetic. Small, pale, with that strange mane of dark hair that humans insist on growing from their scalps. Her uniform was torn, revealing skin that seemed thinner than our filing membranes. When Vrathix had struck her, just once, she had crumpled like wet paper. Perhaps intelligence made an error, I suggested, consulting my data tablet. The reports indicated humans were unusually durable. Durable? Vrathix leaned down, poking her limp form with one talon. Grell, this creature has a single heart. One. And look at this skin. I can see the blood vessels through it. What kind of apex predator evolves with transparent protective covering? I had to admit he had a point. 3 months into the war with Earth, and we had expected something more impressive. The humans had destroyed 4 of our colony ships, boarded the dreadnought Sovereign Terror, and somehow managed to detonate our primary weapons facility on Calth Prime. We had assumed we were fighting giants. Instead, we got this. Lieutenant Reeves groaned, and I noticed her eyes opening. They were an odd greenish color, like the algae pools back on my homeworld, and they focused on Vrathix with an intensity that made my secondary spine shiver. You done showing off? She rasped. Vrathix laughed, a sound like rocks being ground in a disposal unit. It speaks. Tell me, little human, does it hurt? That single blow? Because I barely touched you. Yeah. Well, she coughed, and I saw purple blood. Their blood. Not ours. Spatter on the floor. I've got low iron. Been meaning to take supplements. Supplements? I translated for Vrathix, who did not speak the human language as well as I did. I believe she is being sarcastic, Commander. I gathered that, Grell. Vrathix circled her slowly. Here is what will happen, Lieutenant Maya Reeves of Earth Vessel Prometheus. You will tell us the location of your fleet's rally point. You will provide access codes to your communication networks. And you will explain how your pathetically fragile species managed to destroy our ships. She actually smiled, blood on her teeth, barely able to sit up, and she smiled. Or what? You'll hit me again? This was going to be a long interrogation. 3 hours later, I was genuinely concerned we might have accidentally killed her. Humans, it turned out, required significantly more maintenance than Katharii prisoners. They needed water constantly. Their internal temperature had to stay within a ridiculously narrow range, and apparently they could not breathe our standard atmospheric mix without something called oxygen enrichment. Her biology is failing, I reported to Vrathix, who was pacing the observation room. Heart rate is erratic, respiration is shallow, and her core temperature has dropped 2 degrees. Then fix it, he snarled. I want answers before she expires. The High Command is breathing down my neck plates about this human offensive. I adjusted the environmental controls, pumping in more oxygen and raising the ambient temperature. Through the observation window, I watched Reeves take a shuddering breath, some color returning to her face. Better? I asked through the speaker. Oh, sure, she said, her voice stronger now. Nothing says hospitality like basic, breathable air. You guys should really work on your Yelp reviews. Yelp reviews? I queried my translator. Nothing. Human idioms were infuriating. Vrathix entered the chamber again, this time carrying his ceremonial blade. It was an impressive weapon, forged from compressed stellar matter, capable of cutting through starship hulls. He placed it on the table in front of her. Do you know what this is? Compensating for something? I choked on my own saliva glands. Even by human standards, that was bold. Vrathix's crest flared red. This blade has ended 17 civilizations. It has carved the skulls of champions from 600 worlds. It drinks the essence of the fallen and sings their deaths across the void. So, yes to the compensation thing. Got it. He struck her again. Harder this time. She flew backward, hit the wall, and slumped down. I checked her vitals, concerned. Still alive, but barely. Perhaps we should try a different approach? The humans have proven resistant to standard interrogation. There is nothing standard about this, Vrathix growled. She mocks me. Me. A decorated warrior of the Katharii Empire. Yes, sir, but she is also concussed, possibly internally hemorrhaging, and I believe her left arm is fractured in 3 places. Weak, he muttered, but he lowered his blade. Reeves stirred, looked up at both of us, and said something that would change everything. You really don't understand, do you? Understand what? I asked. Why, you're losing. Vrathix froze. We are not losing. Our forces outnumber yours 300 to 1. Our ships are larger, our weapons more powerful, our warriors bred for conquest across 10,000 generations. Yeah, she wheezed, pushing herself up with her good arm. And yet here we are. You grabbed me off a damaged scout ship because you're desperate for intel. Your supply lines are overstretched, your colonies are going dark, and every week you lose more ships to these pathetically fragile humans. Lies. But there was uncertainty in Vrathix's voice. She laughed, and it was the most unsettling sound I had ever heard from something so wounded. You think we're weak because we break easy. That's your first mistake. You have redundant organs, armored skin, distributed nervous systems. You're built like tanks. We're built like glass cannons. Glass cannons? The translator struggled with the phrase, high damage output, low defense, she explained. Evolution didn't give us armor, Commander. It gave us something better. It gave us spite. Spite? Vrathix tilted his head. Determination, I corrected. Stubbornness. Refusal to accept defeat. Close enough, Reeves said. See? You're designed to take a hit and keep fighting. That's great if you're facing enemies who fight fair. But we evolved on a death world where everything was trying to kill us all the time. Predators, diseases, weather, other humans, you name it. So we learned to hit first, hit hard, and keep hitting until the threat was eliminated. Philosophy will not save you, Vrathix said, but he sounded less certain. No, she agreed. But understanding why you've already lost might save some of your people. The lights flickered. Both of us looked up at the ceiling, confused. Grell? Vrathix said quietly. What was that? I was already checking my systems. Unknown, Commander. Could be a power fluctuation or maintenance malfunction. Let me contact engineering. No response. Engineering. Respond. Security. Report status. Silence. Reeves smiled that bloody smile again. Oh, good. They're here. Who is here? I demanded. My friends? The explosion that followed was not particularly large by military standards. It was, however, precisely placed. The blast door to our interrogation level peeled open like the lid on a food container, and through the smoke came shapes moving with terrifying efficiency. Humans. They were smaller than Katharii soldiers, wearing armor that looked almost ceremonial in its lightweight construction. But they moved like liquid death, flowing through our corridors with weapons that spat hyper-accelerated projectiles faster than our shields could compensate. All units, converge on detention level! Vrathix roared into his communicator. We have a human incursion! Took them 18 minutes, Reeves said casually. New. Record. They're getting slow. You planned this, I accused. Obviously. She stood up, wincing, and I realized with horror that she had been exaggerating her injuries. Oh, they were real, make no mistake. But she had been playing them up, making us underestimate her, making us think she was helpless. The door to our observation room exploded inward, and I found myself facing 3 human soldiers. They moved past me without a second glance, focused entirely on Vrathix. "Contact!" one shouted. "Confirmed hostile commander-level target." Vrathix was not a coward. He raised his blade, the one that had ended civilizations, and charged. The humans simply stepped aside, firing as they moved. Their rounds should not have penetrated his armor, but somehow they found the gaps, the weak points, the places where even Katharii durability failed. He fell to one knee, ichor leaking from a dozen wounds. "Humans," he gasped. "You cannot win. Our empire spans 200 systems. You control barely 30 planets. The numbers alone make victory impossible." The lead human, a sergeant by his markings, tilted his head. "Did you know that on Earth there's an animal called the honey badger? Nasty little thing, weighs maybe 30 pounds. Takes down prey 50 times its size." "What does that have to do with anything?" Vrathix demanded. "Honey badger doesn't care about the numbers. Doesn't care that it's smaller, weaker, should lose. It just keeps fighting until the other guy stops moving." The sergeant looked at Reeves. "You good, Lieutenant?" "Been better." "Arms broken?" "Probably a concussion." "Definitely some internal bleeding." "Standard Tuesday, really?" "Can you walk?" "Does it matter?" "Fair point." He gestured to one of the other soldiers who moved to support her. "Let's move. Demo team reports we've got about 4 minutes before their reinforcements breach the lower levels." They were leaving. Just like that. In and out, surgical strike, extract their wounded. It should not have been possible. "Wait!" I called out. "Wait! I don't understand. How did you find this facility? Our location was classified, hidden behind 3 scrambler fields and a gravitic distortion net." The sergeant paused at the door. "You interrogated her for 3 hours. So Lieutenant Reeves is a communications specialist. Her neural implant was broadcasting your entire base layout, security codes, and patrol schedules from the moment you threw her in that cell. We've been planning this rescue since she got captured." I looked at Reeves, who shrugged with her good shoulder. "Surprise? But you were dying! I monitored your vitals. Your body was shutting down." "Yeah, that wasn't fun," she admitted. "Pro tip for future kidnappings. If you're going to torture humans, maybe don't give us breathing room to recover. We're really good at bouncing back from near-death experiences. Evolutionary advantage of being fragile. We get lots of practice, almost dying." They were at the corridor. Now, moving quickly. Vrathix tried to stand, tried to stop them, but his legs would not support his weight. "This isn't over," he said. Reeves looked back at him, and for the first time, I saw genuine pity in her eyes. "Commander, it was over the moment you assumed breaking easy meant breaking permanently. That's the thing about humans. We break all the time. Bones, hearts, spirits. We break constantly. But we also heal. And when we heal, we come back stronger, angrier, and way more motivated to make sure the thing that broke us doesn't get a second chance." She reached down, grabbed Vrathix's ceremonial blade from where he had dropped it, and held it up to examine in the emergency lighting. "Nice knife. I'll keep this as a souvenir." Then they were gone, disappearing into the smoke and chaos, leaving us with our wounded pride and the growing realization that we had fundamentally misunderstood our enemy. I found Commander Vrathix in the medical bay 6 hours later, being treated for his wounds. The doctors said he would survive, though his fighting days were likely over. Too much damage to his primary motor cortex. "Grell," he said when he saw me. "Report. The humans escaped cleanly. We lost 47 soldiers in the engagement, another 100 wounded. They suffered 0 casualties. 0, Commander. They walked into our most secure facility, extracted their asset, and left without losing a single soldier." He closed his eyes. "High Command will have my head for this." "Perhaps not," I said carefully. I have been reviewing the engagement footage and analyzing human military doctrine. I believe I understand something crucial about our enemy. Tell me, we have been treating this as a conventional war. Force versus force. Numbers versus numbers. But the humans are not fighting conventionally. Every battle, every engagement, they are learning, adapting. They lose ships, yes. They take casualties. But every loss teaches them something new about us. They are treating this entire war as one extended intelligence-gathering operation. To what end? To find our weaknesses. To understand exactly how to break us most efficiently. I pulled up a tactical display. Look at this pattern. Every human attack in the last month has targeted support infrastructure, supply depots, communication relays, officer training facilities. They are not trying to win through attrition. They are trying to decapitate our command structure and starve our military machine. Vrathix was quiet for a long moment. Can we adapt? Can we counter this strategy? I don't know, I admitted. The humans have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. For most species, this is metaphorical. For them, I believe it may be literally true. Their biology, their culture, their entire evolutionary history is built around surviving impossible odds through sheer stubborn refusal to die. Then, what do you recommend? I thought about Lieutenant Maya Reeves, bleeding and broken, but never defeated. Thought about how she had turned her own capture into a weapon against us. Thought about the expression on her face when she took Vrathix's blade. I recommend, I said slowly, that we consider peace negotiations before they decide we're too dangerous to leave intact. Vrathix laughed bitterly. The High Command will never agree. They believe victory is inevitable. Then the High Command has not met the humans. I looked at the empty space where his ceremonial blade should have been mounted on the wall. Commander, we grabbed what we thought was a helpless prisoner. Within 4 hours, she had turned our own facility against us, called in an extraction team, and walked out with your personal weapon as a trophy. If that is what one wounded human can accomplish, what will they do when they stop playing defensive? He had no answer to that. Neither did I. But 3 weeks later, when the human fleet appeared in orbit around Calth Prime itself, when their Marines boarded every military installation simultaneously, when they broadcast a simple message demanding surrender or annihilation, I knew we should have listened. The message was delivered by Lieutenant Maya Reeves, her arm in a regenerative cast, standing on the bridge of the Prometheus, with Vrathix's blade mounted on the wall behind her. To the Katharii Empire, she said, her voice calm and professional. You called us breakable. You thought fragility meant weakness. We're here to correct that misunderstanding. Surrender now, and we'll show mercy. Fight, and we'll show you exactly how dangerous breakable things become when they refuse to stay broken. You have 6 hours to decide. Choose wisely. I was in the command center when High Command finally made their choice. They voted for surrender by a margin of 147 to 3. The 3 who voted to continue fighting were replaced within the hour. Sometimes, I still think about that interrogation chamber. About how confident we were, how certain that size, strength, and durability would win the day. How completely we had misunderstood what makes a predator dangerous. It is not armor or claws or redundant hearts. It is the absolute, unshakable refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat seems inevitable. Especially then. The humans have a word for this quality, one that my translator always struggles to properly convey. They call it resilience. But I think there is more to it than that. Something deeper, harder, forged in the crucible of a world that tried to kill them for millennia and failed. They do not survive because they are strong. They survive because they are too stubborn to die. And now that they have won, now that the war is over and treaties are signed, I find myself grateful we learned this lesson when we did. Before they showed us what humans are truly capable of when you push them past breaking. Because Lieutenant Maya Reeves was right about one thing. We really did not understand. Not until it was too late. 18 months after the surrender, I found myself doing something I never imagined possible. Having coffee with a human. Well, she called it coffee. To me, it smelled like burnt vegetation mixed with industrial solvent. But Lieutenant Maya Reeves, now promoted to captain, seemed to enjoy it immensely. "You know what I miss most about the war?" she said, stirring some white powder into her cup. I nearly choked on my own beverage, a mild alkaline solution flavored with mineral salts. "Excuse me? You miss the war? Not the killing part, obviously." She took a sip, made a face that suggested even she found the taste questionable. But the clarity, everything was simple. You guys were trying to conquer our planets. We were trying to stop you. Black and white. Good versus bad. Now everything is complicated. We were sitting in what humans called a cafe on Station Unity, the joint Katharii human diplomatic outpost that had been established after the treaties. Around us, members of both species tried to coexist peacefully, with varying degrees of success. A Katharii merchant was arguing with a human shopkeeper about import tariffs. Two human engineers were explaining fusion reactor maintenance to a group of confused Katharii technicians. A Katharii child was staring in fascination at a human street performer juggling balls of light. Strange times indeed. "I have a question," I said carefully. "Something that has bothered me since that day in the interrogation chamber." "Shoot. Why did you really let us capture you? The neural implant broadcasting, the rescue team, all of it was clearly planned. But you took genuine damage. Vrathix hurt you badly. You could have died." She set down her cup, and for a moment I saw past the casual demeanor to something harder underneath, something that had survived interrogation and torture and come out the other side. "Because we needed proof," she said quietly. "High Command back on Earth was divided. Half wanted total war, complete annihilation of the Katharii threat. The other half believed negotiation was possible. I volunteered to get captured, to gather intelligence, yes, but also to test a theory." "What theory?" "That you guys were conquerors, not genociders. There is a difference." She leaned back in her chair. "Conquerors want territory, resources, strategic advantage. Genociders just want everything else dead. If Vrathix had executed me immediately, or tortured me past the point of recovery, we would have known negotiation was pointless. But he kept me alive, tried to extract information. That meant you saw value in understanding your enemy, which meant you were capable of eventually seeing us as something other than obstacles. That is incredibly risky logic to bet your life on." "Yeah, well," she grinned. "Glass cannon, remember? We take the big risks for the big payoffs." Before I could respond, an alarm chimed throughout the station. Not an emergency alert, but a priority announcement. The screens around the cafe flickered to life, showing the news broadcast. "Reports coming in from the outer fringe," the anchor said, a human woman with elaborate facial decorations. "Multiple colonies, both Katharii and human, have gone dark in the Sector 7 region. Contact was lost approximately 6 hours ago. Military vessels from both fleets are en route to investigate." Maya's expression changed instantly, the casual friendliness replaced by tactical assessment. 6 hours. That is long enough for a full orbital bombardment or a complete surface sterilization. You think this is an attack? I think 6 colonies do not go silent simultaneously by accident. She was already on her communicator, calling someone. "Torres?" "Yeah, I am seeing it now. Get the Prometheus prepped for immediate departure. Full combat loadout, maximum crew. I will be there in 20 minutes. She stood, throwing currency chips on the table. "Sorry, Grell. Duty calls." Wait. Something occurred to me. Sector 7 borders the contested zone. If there is hostile action there, it could violate the peace treaties. Both our governments might interpret it as aggression from the other side. She paused, looking at me with those unsettling green eyes. You thinking what I am thinking? That we should investigate together before our respective military leaders jump to conclusions and restart a war nobody wants? Great minds think alike. She grabbed her jacket. You coming, or do I have to do all the hero stuff myself? I should have reported to my superiors. Should have followed proper diplomatic channels. Should have done 1,000 things that would have been sensible and appropriate for someone in my position. Instead, I followed Captain Maya Reeves to her ship. The Prometheus was smaller than I expected for a vessel that had played such a crucial role in the war. Humans, I was learning, preferred speed and maneuverability over heavy armor. The ship could probably not survive a direct hit from a Katharii dreadnought, but it would never be in position to take that hit in the first place. "Welcome aboard," said Commander Jacobs, the ship's captain. He was older than Maya, with gray streaking his hair and scars visible on his neck. "Lieutenant Grell, correct? Maya says you are one of the good ones." I am uncertain what that designation means, but I appreciate the sentiment. "It means you did not shoot at us during the war," Maya said, leading me to what humans called the bridge. "That puts you ahead of 90% of Katharii we have met. To be fair, I am an intelligence analyst, not a combat soldier. Shooting people is outside my job description." "Lucky you." The bridge was controlled chaos. Humans moved between stations with practiced efficiency, calling out status reports and system checks. Their technology was less refined than ours, more improvised, but there was an elegance to how they used it. Everything had multiple backup systems, redundant controls, manual overrides. They built for failure and planned for survival. "Helm, set course for Sector 7, Jacobs ordered. "Maximum velocity, but keep weapons cold. We are not looking for a fight today." "Yes, sir." Maya brought up a holographic display showing the affected colonies. 3 Katharii settlements, 3 human mining operations, all established after the peace treaties as joint economic ventures. Population ranging from 5,000 to 20,000 per colony. "That is 100,000 potential casualties," I said, my stomach sacks churning. "If this is an attack, the death toll could trigger immediate retaliation, which is why we get there first." She manipulated the display, highlighting energy signatures. "I am reading residual tachyon emissions along the colony perimeters." Someone jumped in, hit all 6 targets simultaneously, and jumped out. "Coordinated assault. Military precision." But whose military? That was the setter, question hanging over all of us. We reached the first colony, a Katharii settlement called New Karth, 4 hours later. The sight that greeted us made my secondary heart skip several beats. The colony was intact. No bombardment damage, no signs of fighting, no bodies in the streets. It simply looked abandoned, as if everyone had stood up one day and walked away from their lives. "Life signs?" Jacobs asked. "Negative, sir," reported the sensor operator. "No biological readings at all. Not human, not Katharii, not even bacterial." "That is impossible," I said. "Even if you evacuated the entire population, you would still detect microorganisms, ambient wildlife, something. Unless someone sterilized the entire biosphere," Maya said grimly. "Scanning for residual radiation or chemical weapons. Nothing. Whatever did this, it was not conventional." We landed a shuttle team, with Maya insisting on leading personally despite my protests about proper command structure safety. The colony's streets were pristine and eerily perfect. Food still on tables, vehicles parked neatly, doors left open mid-conversation. It was like walking through a snapshot, a frozen moment in time. "This is creepy as hell," muttered one of the Marines, a young man named Parker. "Where did they go?" "Better question," Maya said, kneeling to examine something on the ground. "What is this residue?" I moved closer, analyzing the faint shimmering substance coating various surfaces. My scanner gave conflicting readings, identifying it as organic, inorganic, synthetic, and natural all at once. This does not match any known compound in our databases, I reported. The molecular structure keeps shifting, like it cannot decide what it wants to be. Biological weapon? Suggested Jacobs over the comm. If so, it is unlike anything either of our species has developed. Maya collected a sample in a sealed container. We need to check the other colonies, see if the pattern holds. It did. All 6 colonies showed the same characteristics. Populations vanished, no signs of struggle, and that same impossible residue coating random surfaces. By the time we investigated the 4th site, a human mining operation called Prospect Station, a terrible suspicion was forming in my mind. Captain Reeves, I said carefully, I need to access your xenobiology database. Why? Because I think I recognize this pattern. There was an incident, decades ago, before either of our species ventured this far into the galaxy, a research expedition that went dark under similar circumstances. She pulled up the archives, and I searched through classified Katharii records, ones that technically I should not have access to anymore. But old passwords die hard, and apparently Katharii military intelligence had not updated their security protocols since the war. There, I said, highlighting a file. The vanishing of Outpost Meridian. 60 years ago, a Katharii scientific station investigating a spatial anomaly simply ceased all communication. When rescue teams arrived, they found the station intact, but completely devoid of life. No bodies, no signs of attack, and residue matching this exact molecular signature. What happened to them? We never found out. The area was quarantined, the anomaly was classified as a natural hazard, and the whole incident was buried in the archives. But I remember my professor at the academy mentioning it as an unsolved mystery. Maya's expression hardened. So this has happened before, and your government covered it up. To be fair, your government probably would have done the same. Unknown threats tend to cause panic. Fair point. She turned to Jacobs. We need to find that quarantine zone, compare it to our current situation. If this is the same phenomenon, maybe we can figure out what we are dealing with. Already on it, Jacobs replied, pulling up stellar cartography now. If we overlay the old Katharii quarantine coordinates with the current colony, disappearances, we get an interesting pattern. The holographic display updated, showing both incidents mapped across space. The colonies formed a rough circle around a central point, approximately 6 light-years from our current position. They are surrounding something, I realized. The colonies were not the target. They were just in the way. In the way of what? Parker asked nervously. Before anyone could answer, every sensor on the ship started screaming alerts simultaneously. Something massive was emerging from subspace directly ahead of us. Something that made the Prometheus feel like a toy boat facing a tidal wave. Contact! The sensor operator shouted. Mass reading is off the scale. I am talking planetary size, but it is moving with purpose. The view screen flickered to life, and we saw it. I do not have words adequate to describe what emerged from the spatial distortion. Imagine if you took a storm, a mountain, and a nightmare, blended them together, and gave the resulting horror the ability to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It was crystalline and organic, solid and gaseous, beautiful and absolutely terrifying. What in the name of Terra is that? Jacobs whispered. Unknown life form, Maya said, her voice remarkably steady for someone facing the incomprehensible. Xenobiology has no classification. It exists partially outside our standard dimensional framework. The entity, if that is what it was, moved past us without seeming to notice our presence. Tendrils of impossible matter extended from its core, reaching out toward the nearest colony world. Where they touched, reality itself seemed to shimmer and fade. It is harvesting, I said, understanding clicking into place. Not attacking, harvesting. The colonies, the people, they are all being converted into whatever that residue is. Energy maybe, or information. The entity feeds on biological complexity. Can we stop it? Jacobs asked. With what? Our weapons are designed to fight ships and soldiers, not spatial anomalies. Maya was frantically running calculations. Even our heaviest missiles would be like throwing pebbles at a hurricane. So we just let it eat 100,000 people? I did not say that. She looked at me. Grell, you said the original incident was near a spatial anomaly. What kind? I checked the old records. Subspace rift, naturally occurring. The research team was studying its properties when they vanished. So this thing lives in subspace, only emerging periodically to feed. Maya pulled up a tactical display. If we can force it back into subspace and then collapse the rift behind it, we could trap it in its home dimension. That would require detonating our entire reactor core directly inside the rift opening, Jacobs said. The ship would be destroyed. Everyone aboard would die. Not everyone. Maya was already plotting trajectories. Shuttles can make it to minimum safe distance if we launch immediately. Crew evacuates. I stay behind to pilot the ship into position and trigger the overload. Absolutely not, Jacobs said flatly. It is the only way. Then I will pilot the ship. You evacuate with the crew. With respect, sir, you are too valuable. The fleet needs experienced commanders. I am just a recently promoted captain with more reckless courage than common sense. She smiled, that dangerous smile I had seen in the interrogation chamber. Besides, someone needs to stay behind to make sure this thing does not snack on our people while they escape. Maya, Jacob started. That is an order, Commander. Evacuate the ship. Now. For a moment, I thought he would refuse. Would pull rank, find some regulation that overruled her decision. But then, he looked at her face and saw the same thing I did. Absolute determination. The unshakable certainty that she was right, and nothing would change her mind. Damn stubborn humans, he muttered. But he was already signaling the evacuation. The crew moved with practiced efficiency, abandoning their stations and heading for the shuttle bay. Parker looked back once, conflicted, but his sergeant pulled him along. I stayed on the bridge. Grell, Maya said. You too. Off the ship. No, that was not a request. I am aware. I moved to the secondary control station, but you need someone to monitor the entity's movements and calculate the optimal detonation point. Your sensor operator just evacuated, and you cannot fly the ship and run tactical analysis simultaneously. You will die. Probably. I pulled up the sensor feeds, tracking the entity as it continued harvesting the colony worlds. But I am an intelligence analyst. Gathering critical data is literally my job description. And this data, knowing how to fight this thing if it ever returns, could save billions of lives. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she nodded once, sharp and respectful. All right, let us go kill a cosmic horror. Preferably without dying in the process. I make no promises. The Prometheus turned, accelerating toward the spatial rift at maximum velocity. Behind us, the entity finally seemed to notice our approach, tendrils shifting to track our movement. It did not attack, exactly, but reality around us started to feel wrong, like the universe was holding its breath. Rift opening detected, I reported. Bearing 273 Mark 16. Distance, 40,000 kilometers and closing. Reactor overload initiated, Maya said calmly, her hands flying across the controls. Countdown set for 60 seconds on my mark. The entity is moving to intercept. I think it recognizes us as a threat. Good. Let it come. We need it close to the rift for this to work. The ship shuddered as one of those impossible tendrils brushed against our hull. Alarms screamed warnings about dimensional instability, hull integrity, and things that my translator could not even properly interpret. 30 seconds to detonation point, I said, watching our approach. Entity is directly between us and the rift. We will have to go through it. Then, we go through it. Maya pushed the engines past their safety limits. Hang on, Grell. This is going to be rough. Rough was an understatement. We hit the entity at a significant percentage of light speed, and I experienced several subjective eternities where I existed in states that biology should not permit. I was solid and liquid, alive and dead, present and absent. The entity tried to harvest us, convert us into energy like it had the colonists, but our momentum carried us through before it could complete the process. Then we were out the other side, the rift opening directly ahead. "Mark!" Maya shouted, initiating the reactor overload. 45 seconds to detonation, I confirmed, though my voice sounded strange even to my own hearing. Entity is pursuing, attempting to enter subspace behind us. Perfect! She aimed the ship directly into the rift's heart. Once we are through, the explosion should collapse the entrance, trap it on the other side. Should? 93% probability, according to my calculations. And the other 7%? We die horribly, and the entity eats the galaxy. But let us think positive. We plunged into the rift, and subspace swallowed us whole. I woke up in a medical bay, which was surprising because I had been relatively certain I was dead. "Easy," said a familiar voice. "You have been unconscious for 6 days. Take it slow." I turned my head, movement sending spikes of pain through neural pathways I had forgotten existed, and saw Captain Maya Reeves sitting beside my bed. Her left arm was wrapped in some kind of regenerative sleeve, and she had a new scar across her forehead, but she was alive. "How?" I managed to croak. "Emergency transport beam. Turns out the Katharii rescue ship that responded to the distress call has better transporter technology than we do. They grabbed both of us about 2 seconds before the Prometheus went critical." She grinned. Though the transport officer said pulling us out of subspace while riding a exploding reactor core was the most difficult rescue he ever performed. "You are officially a legend in Katharii emergency services now." Did it work? The entity? Trapped on the other side of a collapsed subspace rift, according to all available sensors? Whether it is dead or just really annoyed, we cannot tell. But it is not eating any more colonies, so I am calling that a win. I tried to sit up, failed, and settled for just existing horizontally. The colonists? Her expression darkened. Gone. The entity had already converted them before we arrived, but we saved billions of others who would have been next on the menu, and we recovered enough data to develop early warning systems for future incursions. If this thing, or others like it, ever try to emerge again, we will be ready. Others? That was a disturbing thought. The universe is big and weird, Grell, probably full of things we cannot even imagine yet. But now we know that when those things show up, humanity and the Katharii can face them together. A nurse, human this time, entered to check my vitals. "Visiting hours are over, Captain. Lieutenant Grell needs rest." "Right." Maya stood, wincing slightly. "I will check on you tomorrow. Try not to save any more galaxies while I am gone." "I shall endeavor to restrain myself." She paused at the door. "Hey, Grell, thanks for staying. I know you did not have to. Neither did you. Yet here we both are, annoyingly still alive. Glass cannons, remember? We break, we heal, we keep fighting." She smiled. "Though, I am starting to think maybe you guys are not so different. You stayed when you could have run. Faced death to save people you barely knew. That takes the same kind of stubborn courage humans pride themselves on." After she left, I lay there thinking about her words, about how humans and Katharii had gone from bitter enemies to reluctant allies to something approaching actual friendship, about how facing cosmic horror together builds bonds faster than decades of diplomacy, about how maybe being breakable was not a weakness after all. Maybe it was just another word for being brave enough to risk shattering. 3 months later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a small holographic display and a handwritten note in surprisingly neat human script. Thought you would want to see this. Congratulations on the promotion, Lieutenant Commander. You earned it. Your friend, Maya. I activated the display, and footage played showing the official ceremony where both Katharii and human governments jointly awarded medals for extraordinary heroism. Maya received hers in full dress uniform, looking uncomfortable with the attention. My award was presented in absentia, since I was still recovering. But what made me pause was the final clip. Security footage from the Prometheus, seconds before the reactor detonation, showing Maya and I working side by side as reality collapsed around us. At the last moment, just before the transport beam grabbed us, she looked over and said something the audio could not quite capture. I enhanced the recording, isolated her voice, and played it again. Not bad for a couple of breakable idiots, huh? I found myself laughing, a sound that hurt my still-healing thorax, but felt good anyway. She was right. We had both broken that day. Broken physically, broken dimensionally, broken in ways that medical science was still trying to understand. But we had healed. And in healing, we had proven something important. That the strongest bonds are not forged from those who never fall, but from those who fall together and help each other stand back up. Humans call it resilience. Katharii call it honor. I call it the best reason to face impossible odds alongside someone equally crazy enough to try. The galaxy is vast, dangerous, and full of things that want to eat us, or conquer us, or harvest us for energy. But it is also full of allies we never expected, friendships forged in fire, and the stubborn refusal of breakable beings to accept that breaking means beaten. Commander Vrathix once told me that humans were fragile, weak, unworthy of respect. He was wrong. Not about the fragile part, that much is true. But fragility is not weakness. It is simply a different kind of strength. The strength to break and heal and break again, learning something new each time. The strength to face annihilation with a smile and a sarcastic comment. The strength to sacrifice everything for people you barely know because it is the right thing to do. Captain Maya Reeves taught me that, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure no one underestimates breakable things ever again. Because sometimes the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy are not the ones who cannot be broken. They are the ones who refuse to stay that way.